Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that gives you all the arrows you need in your quiver when you start to hear some of the nonsense coming from across the barbecue or at the water cooler in your office. You can find out more about us and get involved at virginiainstitute.org, and by all means get involved with all the folks that we bring here to the program to share some time with you, such as our first guest this week, Mike Hammond of the Gun Owners of America. Mike, welcome back to Freedom and Prosperity Radio. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me, Joe. Hello, Freedom and Prosperity.
Oh, please, it's there somewhere. I think it's hiding in the woods right now because it's scared for itself. Mike, you've filed a lawsuit against the bump stock ban
Yes.
in coordination with our friends at the VCDL, and even got the NRA to join in with an amicus brief.
Belatedly. When the administration appealed our victory by appealing to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati en banc, NRA came on, and National Association of Gun Rights also came on. So great, better late than never. Basically, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms took the position that a bump stock, which I didn't know what it was at the outset of this whole controversy either, but it's a piece of plastic and foam rubber that you can you can use it just like you can use a belt or a loop in your jeans or something else in order to make a semi-automatic firearm fire faster, but not fire automatically, which would normally be the definition for what a machine gun is. But what the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms said was, well, we're going to define this piece of plastic as if it's a machine gun. The piece of plastic is a machine gun. So we brought the suit in Michigan, appealed it up to the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati, which said, not surprising to us, you morons, of course a piece of plastic is not a machine gun. A machine gun is a gun, and a piece of plastic is a piece of plastic.
Nice.
Now, why does it matter? A lot of people said, well, I don't use bump stocks. I don't even know what they are, so it doesn't bother me that the government abuses the law. Well, the way it matters is this. The Biden administration is now saying that certain pistol braces, which are used to stabilize pistols and make them fire more accurately, are also machine guns. And guess what? They're pieces of plastic and foam rubber, too. So it turns out that our victory over the BATF on bump stocks, and I say our victory so far, I suppose the Sixth Circuit acting en banc could reverse us, but our victory so far basically makes it impossible for Joe Biden, first of all, to ban pistol braces on the same theory, but also it makes it impossible for them to do what they want to do, and that is ban AR-15 semi-automatics on the basis that if a bump stock is a machine gun because it makes an AR-15 fire faster, then by inference, the AR-15 is also a machine gun because it fires faster with a bump stock. So there are all of these theories that could ban a whole series of things, including the most popular gun in America, which have, for the time being, been legally discredited because of our victory on bump stock.
When they vilify, when they take these firearms and will take some horrific event, which they do nothing towards, easing or even finding the cause of societally or in the human that actually committed the horrific act, and they will just go to the gun, as in the Remington capitulation where they've basically said, yeah, we made the guns, and that made the guy go to Sandy Hook Elementary School, which is ridiculous. I mean, even somebody who doesn't own a firearm has to realize how ridiculous that is.
Well, there are a bunch of stupid things there. And incidentally, what you're referring to, Joe, for the sake of the audience, is that Remington Arms, which made an AR-15, and it made the AR-15 which was used at Sandy Hook, has been sued by 9 of the parents of kids killed at Sandy Hook because they claim, notwithstanding the fact federal law seems to prevent this lawsuit, they claim that Sandy Hook marketed, or that Remington marketed this gun in a way to encourage mass shooters such as the one at Sandy Hook. And I could say his name, but I'm studiously avoiding saying his name because that's what he would have wanted.
Right.
That's why he did the whole thing. He wanted his 15 minutes of fame. So guess what? I'm not giving him his 15 minutes of fame. But the interesting thing is this kid who shot up the school with this Remington AR-15 stole his gun. Well, first of all, he killed his mother, and then he took his mother's guns. So he made no decision with respect to what the guns were, except he took the guns which his mother had purchased. So this marketing strategy makes no sense at all, because the marketing strategy, if it came to the awareness of the shooter, was irrelevant to what he did and what gun he chose. He chose the gun that his dead mother had. So it's a stupid suit. It's a suit that anti-gun Connecticut courts have, not surprisingly, allowed to go forward. And the interesting thing is now, of course, Remington is trying to settle for about $3.36 million a kid, I think, because they don't want the anti-gun movement in America to go in discovery on a fishing expedition through all of their records.
Yeah, so weaponizing, if I can use the word weaponizing our legal system there to achieve a goal, and as if ripped from one of our favorite citizens, John Grisham's novels. We're visiting with Mike Hammond. He is the president of the Gun Owners of America. We're talking about updates, the suits they have going on, going through the courts, and Mike, one of the issues with defending a right that should be fairly clearly laid out in the Bill of Rights is this secondary campaign to have a whole bunch of new rights created. Your right to housing, your right to a wage.
Abortion.
Right to abortion. All of these things.
All the rights that don't appear in the Constitution, in which the Founding Fathers, they would have gone crazy if they had realized that their words were going to be interpreted to create these, quote, rights, close quote, whereas the one thing that they absolutely knew, that the right to keep and bear arms was the guarantor against a tyrannical government. That's being read out of the Constitution, or at least if the liberals and the Biden administration have their way, it will be read out of the Constitution. So rights that don't exist come into existence because the liberals like them, and rights which absolutely are central to our constitutional system are disappearing because the liberals don't like them.
When we talk about the humanity side of it, and it's a much harder thing, and I understand a politician whose term may be 2 years or 4 years doesn't want to deal with the situation of mental health care. We have, I think it's 4 out of our 5 mental health care facilities have either shut down intake of new patients or have severely curtailed it due to lack of staff, due to lack of support from the government. Yet they always come forward to a podium and talk talk about, health care or the care for those who are the victims. What about just spending the time that you have coming up with a way to help the humans? Because as I read the Second Amendment, the word gun doesn't appear anywhere in the Second Amendment. So it's just as likely that somebody, if all the guns vanished, could pick up a broadsword or a bow and arrow and do horrible things. Violence is violence, and we have to start finding ways to treat that, don't we, Mike?
Well, I hope that I think the best thing the government could do is completely disinvolve itself with any of this. I mean, I think the case can be made that the government has caused all of this hardship rather than ameliorated it. Mm-hmm. For instance, in 1996, Congress passed the Cole Amendment saying you can't have guns in schools. So it's illegal to have guns in schools. It's a very, very bad thing. We don't want guns in schools, and yet that didn't stop the anonymous, by my mouth at least, Sandy Hook shooter. It didn't stop the Columbine shooters. It didn't stop any of the succession of school shooters between 1999 and the present day from taking a gun in a school and using it to get their 15 minutes of fame. Of course, if you look at MSNBC, they'll say, well, we can't explain exactly what the motivation of this is. Of course we can explain it. They're all the same. The Sandy Hook shooter had an entire bulletin board, and I don't mean a computer bulletin board, a bulletin board with clippings from all of the attention gotten by previous shooters.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
These people want their 15 minutes of fame, and the reason they go into schools is because the government has outlawed guns in schools, which means that they know they can go into that school, they can kill every kid in that school, and they don't have to worry that anyone is going to fire back. That's why if you look at virtually all the most recent mass shootings, certainly the one in Boulder, Colorado, to give you an example that comes to mind, they all occur in gun-free zones. Oh, yeah. Most of them occur in states that absolutely hate guns and ban them in many respects. And incidentally, the Boulder shooter traveled 30 miles out of his way because he knew that this grocery store was going to be gun-free. And ditto, the earlier shooter in Aurora, Colorado, who passed a movie theater which allowed guns and went to a movie theater which banned them. The last thing these kids want when they get their 15 minutes of fame is for that time to be cut short by a civilian who fires back.
Well, we see this now. The General Assembly here in Virginia last year gave localities the permission to enact more restrictive gun laws on their government property and in public spaces. And yet we see shootings spiking between 20 and 40% depending on the area. And this includes public housing reservations. This includes government office buildings. And it's because they can restrict it there. But what they wind up, especially in the case of some of these public housing reservations, is this is where the drug gangs are the most virulent, and they're the ones who are now ruling these neighborhoods because they're the only ones with firearms.
Yeah, two examples. One example is Virginia Tech, and then there's a law school. I want to say Appalachian Law School. I can't think of the name right now. Right up the road. Both of them were targeted by mass shooters. Virginia Tech had made a very big pitch to the state legislature that it should be allowed to ban guns on campuses, and in fact it did. Gun Owners of America had gone before the Virginia state legislature and said a safe school is an armed school, and we lost that battle.
Mm-hmm.
Would that we had won that battle in the Virginia legislature, because this guy just went from classroom to classroom, killing everyone in sight, and there was no one to fire back. The law school down the road, on the other hand, there were two, I think, off-duty policemen who perhaps unlawfully had guns in their cars and ran to get them at the first sign of trouble. And as a result, I can't even think of the name of that law school. It's certainly not a national scandal.
No.
Because they had guns in order to defend themselves.
But they do it at the government buildings because they figure they've got the police there. They've got, if there's ever an example, whether it be Virginia Tech with their security guards or Virginia Beach with the police department right there, that even when you do something like this where there are police, you're not creating a safe zone. You're actually making it more dangerous.
Well, I had a friend. His name was Tony Rudy. He was at a time when Congressman Tom DeLay, was Republican whip, but ran the House. Tony Rudy was the staff guy who ran the House. And in the late 90s, the Capitol, his office was on the first floor of the Capitol. The Capitol is probably the most heavily guarded building in the world, perhaps more so now than it was then. But at that time, Congress spent billions of dollars to guard that building and make it safe. That didn't stop a shooter at that time from bursting into the first floor of the Capitol, shooting the guards at the metal detector, and bursting in the back door of Tom DeLay's office where Tony Rudy worked. The gunman is walking down the hall in the office. If he went left, he would be face-to-face with my friend Tony, and Tony would be dead. If he went right, he would be face-to-face with a Capitol policeman. He went right, and Officer Chestnut died as a result of that. But as Tony was huddling in his office, not knowing whether he was going to live or die in the most heavily guarded building on earth, the one thing that would go through his mind over and over again was, I wish I had a gun.
Sure, and that's what it takes. It takes the good person who's trained enough to be clear-headed about moments like this. I mean, it's all about what you guys do at Gun Owners of America, Mike, is making sure it's not just the purchasing of some hardware, but it's the acknowledgement of the responsibilities that we all have for one another. What's going on? What's the latest there, and how can people join into what you do at Gun Owners of America?
Well, they can join on by logging on to us at gunowners.org. That's GUNOWNERS.org. Right now, I said it a half a year ago that as a result of the Republican loss of the two Georgia Senate seats, we in the Second Amendment community would be spending the next 2 years hanging by our fingernails from a narrow ledge on a cliff overlooking a 1,000-foot chasm.
Yep.
And in fact, we are. The next year and a half will determine whether the Second Amendment continues to exist or not.
Mm.
Right now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I didn't think we would be in this good a position at this point in the Biden administration. The filibuster is held, and incidentally, back in 2017, when a lot of conservatives were saying we need to do away with the filibuster so we can abolish Obamacare, I said that's foolish, and boy, thank heavens I won that battle. So the filibuster is held. Biden is finding it very difficult to pass explicit anti-gun legislation, and it turns out that his executive actions on things like pistol braces are probably going to be rejected by the courts because of our victory on bump stocks. So we're right now. We're crossing our fingers. We're looking at the possibility that Biden is going to try to use this $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, or perhaps the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, in order to sneak gun control in. That's a danger. We're certainly not out of the woods. I have an old saying, and that is, you don't pop the cork until they bang the gavel. So
Exactly.
when this Congress adjourns, sine die, then we can breathe a sigh of relief.
Well, I appreciate
But we have held a lot better than I thought we would.
Well, and it's a lot to do with the efforts of you and all the folks at Gun Owners of America. Mike Hammond, thank you so much for joining us this week on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.
Thank you, Joe.
There's another one right from the places where we thought we could have won this already, healthcare. Dr. Tony Dale, author of The Cure for Healthcare, next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.